Hello, this is Rick Guptill with StruSim. This is the second video, and the first video we showed how we created a sort of a weld part family of that certain model where we identified subparts and then the base part and parts that we didn't want welded. Now we're ready to actually convert a part from a solid into a weld-ready part, and then we'll go through that and we'll create the weld. So the first thing we're going to do again is to load in that step file, solid, and then we're just going to run it through our solid weld prep panel that allows us to, since we already know the family, it's going to create all the welds from that family listing, and then we'll be able to weld it. Alright, so here it is. Rather than move it anywhere, I'm just going to bring up solid weld. We now have this family, and I'm just going to convert it. Okay, so there it is, converted, stripped off the non-welding parts, and then it put it weld. So now what we can do is, this is a shortcut, we can move it to the welding table. We can have two stations, we can put it one way or the other. So this is just kind of on the ground of this station. It allows us to access it with this robot. We've kind of selected a longer gun, Sophronius, for the long torch, because these are actually pretty high, these baffles, and to get the robot in each one is kind of tricky. So some choice has to be made about what weld gun to use. I'm going to open up the weld creation panel, and now it's going to go through and it's going to say, okay, I know this is a full baffle, I know where the welds are on that. This is, I think it's called the S inner end. That's the RWA wrap over there. So it's identifying these different subparts from the statistics, and then it's locating the welds, and then it names them and puts them in a table so that we can look at each weld and we can make adjustment on each weld. The third video will show us actually welding. In this video we're going to go through and we're going to look at each weld in turn and kind of identify them so that we can be ready to weld them. Okay, so here is our weld table. I'll scoot it off to the side a little bit. Helps a lot to have a bigger screen, or maybe two screens with this product. So here are the welds. This subpart, I think it's an S inner end, only has two. The baffles all have 4 welds. We set them up that way. So let's do this. Let's look at this first part, this full baffle. Let me click here. So this is showing the weld. It's at 45 degrees because it's the bisector of these two. It's actually the bisector of this flange. Actually, it's not weld. It's this, but there's a little flange there. The subpart's called 4-number full baffle. That's right out of the CAD model. This is the part type that we gave it. Okay, it's number 1 because it's at station 1 as opposed to station 2. Because if you have at different stations, you might want to weld it differently. And then these are the 4 welds. Boom, boom. And then these are internal names given, 5, 0, 6, and 24. They kind of depend on the geometry and where they're located. So you can't really rely on these necessarily. Those are internal numbers. This is the weld process table that has these are different kinds of what kind of weld is going to take place there. It talks about the frequency of the weave, the different current, the wire feed, different things like that. There's also a multi-pass option. This is the order that they're going to be welded in, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the M stands for master, because you could have the slave robot actually working at the same time on the other end, or maybe if this was a big part, you could have 2 robots working together. Then it has the length of the welds, those 4 welds. And this is if you want to offset, if you don't want to start at the very beginning of the weld, but you want to start end early, then you can set the parameters there. The total length of welds for this part looks like it's around 25 meters. This is these are all in millimeters, these numbers here. Yeah, so next video we'll actually weld this. We'll set some parameters and weld this. So these are all the welds that are on this part here. And the nice thing is we're going to see that once we figure out the welds for this full baffle, then we figured them out. We figured out the welds for all the full baffles.